and welcome back or welcome to my channel. Today I thought it'd be fun to go through some of the goals that I've set myself out for 2024. So these aren't New Year's resolutions out with books, these are some goals that I set specifically around my reading habits and also my 24 books in 2024. I did it last year, 23 books in 2023, where I basically pick out some books that I want to read this year. And I didn't complete it last year, but that's besides the point. I guess one of my goals should have been to complete my 24 in 2024, but that's implied. It's implied. I set myself out 4 specific goals and they're mostly related to my ever-growing TBR. I encourage everyone to have a think about what their reading goals are and to implement them into 2024. This could be anything from reading more books, reading less books, reading bigger books, reading poetry, more genres, more diverse authors, anything. It's just something that you want to implement into your reading habits. My 4 are wanting to read more from my own physical TBR. So last year I ended up taking a lot of books out of the library. I also read quite a few books from my Kindle and ended up not really tackling my physical TBR. For some context to this, I read 89 books last year. I have more unread books on my shelves than I did at the start of last year. I don't know how I did that. I don't know how that's possible. How? I don't know. So my main aim is to read books that are actually on my shelves and to try and get that number down. Ideally, I don't want to put an exact number on it, but ideally I would quite like to have, instead of, I think right now it's over 150, I would quite like to be down at the 110 mark maybe. 100 would be like absolutely ideal, but I don't know if that's being too extreme because I do have pre-orders and lots of subscription boxes. Speaking of which, my second goal is to buy no more than 2 books per month out with current pre-orders and also my subscription boxes. So through Illumicrate and Fairyloot I get 3 books per month, and I've also made some pre-orders. To be fair, the pre-orders I think are maybe like 5 or 6 books throughout the year, but other than that I'm going to buy no more than 2 books per month. So no more than 24 books this year, and hopefully that will help with making sure that I have less unread books on my shelves by the end of this year than I start with. Let's hold myself accountable. Let's do this. I can definitely do it. It's an insane amount of books that I've not read on my shelves, and it's kind of, I'm not proud. But I guess technically buying books and reading books are 2 different hobbies. But no, my goal, I need to have less unread books on my TBR. The third goal I have is to read more translated fiction. So I want to read more like diverse authors and things, and as a consequence I think reading translated fiction is probably the best way for me to do that. So I'll be reading books that I just wouldn't have read otherwise. So it will be books that are translated. For example, I've read some that have been translated from Japanese. I've read some from Italian and Spanish that have been translated that I've really enjoyed, and I think it's a really good way to get an insight into other people's cultures and beliefs and even just different writing styles. It won't be exact since it's translated, but I think it's a really good way for me to read from a more diverse range of authors that I wouldn't read from otherwise if I focus on trying to read a few more translated fiction books. And finally, I don't want to care about the number of books that I read. Yes, I have set a reading goal on Goodreads and Storygraph. I recently got a Storygraph actually. I'll put my link to my account for both Goodreads and Storygraph in the description. Please do follow me because I'm new on Storygraph and it'd be nice to be able to see what everyone else is reading. But that was a wee side note. I don't want to care about the number of books I read. I feel like on Bookstagram and Booktube, there's so much emphasis on the number of books that you read rather than actually reading for enjoyment and getting the information from it and actually sitting with it and taking something away from the book. Like, I'm not talking here about numbers like, oh, I read 100 books. I mean, I've seen people who are talking about reading 500 plus books in a year. And I'm like, how's that possible? And they're saying, oh, I'm listening to audiobooks at 3 times speed. And I'm like, well, are you not just doing that to ramp that number up rather than caring about the content of what you're consuming. So I don't want to mindlessly read to try and get the number up. I even felt myself at points being put off by big books because I was like, that only counts as one book. And I don't want to think like that. I want to tackle more bigger books and read books that I want to read and focus less on that number. I think I care more about the number of pages that I read or the amount of time that I spend reading rather than the number of books I read. I also care about the quality of books that I read. So those are my 4 main goals. They're mostly pertaining to 1, reducing my ridiculous unread TBR pile. 2, reading more diversely. And 3, reading what I want and not caring and not getting too hung up about that number. I don't want to be pushing myself to read when I don't want to. I have a lot of other hobbies. I don't want to neglect them to read just so I can say I've read a ridiculous number of books. So yeah, if anyone's interested, my goal for the year is 75 books, and that's because I read 89 last year, and I found that was like, I was reading when I wanted. I didn't really feel like I was like forcing myself to read, except during my 24-hour reading vlog, but I felt like I was just reading when I wanted to, but I was reading quite a few short books, so if I was to read longer books, I was like, if I reduce the number by like 15, say, then I could end up having like a nice number of books to read. So I just rounded it to 75, and I thought that way I'm pushing myself to continue reading at the speed that I am without making myself get stressed about it. But again, I'm also happy to change that as time goes on. I will not increase it, but I may reduce it depending on how I am at about the 3-4 month mark, because I don't want to stress about it. I don't want to be thinking about the number of books that I read. If you read 1 book or you read 100 books, you're still a reader. You're still valid. It doesn't matter how many books you read, as long as you enjoy it. That's what matters. Anyway, all that nice heartfelt stuff for my goals for reading. I have, as I mentioned, already set up the 24 books I want to read in 2024. As I mentioned last year, 23 and 2023, didn't finish it, so I included all of those books in my 24 and 2024. I'm pretty sure there was 4 or 5 of those I hadn't read yet, so I did actually tackle quite a lot of them, which I'm proud of. I also had a 12 challenge last year, which was basically 12 friends recommended 12 books for me to read. I barely dented that at all. I think I read 3, maybe 4 of those 12 books, which is bad. But I felt like having the 23 and 2023, the 12 challenge, and being part of 3 different book clubs while trying to read what I wanted to read was just stressing me out. I was like, there's too many books to read. So what I've done instead is have my goal of the 24 and 2024, no 12 challenge. It includes all of the books that I didn't read from the 12 challenge last year, all of the 23 and 2023 I didn't read last year, and then the rest are all books from my shelves that I just want to read. So I'm hoping that having only 24 set out won't stress me out as much. I've also been considering maybe reducing the amount of book clubs I'm part of, because having 3 books determined per month from book clubs is a little bit much, to be honest, for me, but it's hard to know which one to leave. I do run one, so I'll definitely be keeping on at that one, but yeah, I don't really know yet. The thing is, they could also be books from my shelves that are chosen, so that it doesn't matter, but that's besides the point. I am going to go through all of the books in my 24 and 2024. I'm not going to go into extreme depth. I'm just going to mention what the books are and maybe some reasons that I want to read those books. Firstly, we have the 4 books that I didn't read for 23 and 2023. Let's go through those. First of all, so we have Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I bought this book in a charity shop ages ago, and it just been sitting on my shelves and I'd heard great things about it, but the mood to read it just hadn't struck at all, and I felt like it wasn't going to. So if I put it onto my list of 23 and 2023, then I'd read it. Lo and behold, here we are, it's 2024, and I didn't read it. So now it's in my 24 and 2024, and I feel like I probably need to schedule it in at some point so that I actually read it. But yeah, that is the first book. Oh, side note actually, something really cute and fun. I made this little jar. This is a little jar I got from my Illumicrate box, and it's a TBR jar. I already have this as a TBR jar with prompts, but this one has all of the books that are on my 24 and 2024 in it. And my plan, so that I can actually read all of them, is to take 2 of these sheets out every month, and then I'll read all of them, because there's 12 months in a year, 24 books. 2 a month means that I'll read my 24 in 2024. So I am actually reading 2 of them in January, and I will mention those whenever they come up, but how cute is this? Absolutely love it. Holding myself accountable here, guys. Holding myself accountable. So I will read Hamnet whenever I pull it out of that jar. I will definitely read it. I have no excuses. Oh, I think actually it might be nicer to like stack these up so that you can see them as I go. I'll move my little stitch ornament down and I will pop this here. So here we've got Hamnet. The next one is The Miniatures by Jessie Burton, which has cute sprayed edges. I don't know why I've not read this book. Got gifted it by a friend a little while back and she loved it, and I've been so excited to read it, and I don't know why I've not picked it up. Like, no idea. Not a clue why I've not picked it up yet. I guess the mood hasn't struck me, but I will definitely be reading it this year, so I'm excited about that. The next one is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. Everyone's been telling me to read this. They're like, you'll love it, Chloe. It is like so your vibe. And it's an amazing book. Everyone I know who's read it recommends this so much. And I've still not picked it up. Bizarre. I'll be reading it this year. Definitely. 100%. No excuses. And I'm sure I will love it. Because if everyone around me is saying I will, then I'm sure I will. The last one from 23 in 2023 is Queenie. And this is a book that was listed for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2020, so again, it should be a good book. I should really enjoy it. I bought it from a charity shop at the same time I bought Hamnet actually, and the mood hasn't struck. I don't know why I've not read it. No idea, not a clue. I have no excuses, zero, zilch. So those are the books from 23 and 2023. The rest I'll be going through are from the 12 challenge. I don't own all of these yet. The plan at the moment is to borrow it from the people that have recommended it, if I know them personally, which I know a few of them, or to get it on my Kindle or buy them, because these are books that were recommended last year to me. I feel like I should read them, and I know I'll be adding to my TBR, and that's one of the reasons I'm allowed 2 books a month to buy, because I might need to buy some books, but let's go through those ones. So the first one is House of Salt and Sorrow, and that was recommended to me by a friend that I know personally. She's actually one of my best friends, so I'm sure I'll be able to borrow the book from her and then I won't need to buy it. But then I might love it and want to buy it. But it's fine. I'll be fine. I can refrain. I can just borrow it. It's fine. The next one is one that I've actually bought. I bought this recently, and that is Tender as the Flesh. This was recommended again by another close friend, so I could have borrowed it, but it was a book that I was super hyped about reading, and I was like, I kind of want to own this book, so I bought it, and I'm actually reading this one in January. So this one will be read, and I'll be talking about it in my January reading wrap up later this month, because I'll be reading it this month. Came out of the jar. I'm reading it. Speaking of which, I'll be doing TBR videos, not in January, but for the rest of the months, and you will be able to see me pulling the paper out from this, as well as possibly sometimes doing TBR prompts, etc. So you've got that to look forward to. The next one is another one I own, and I got it from a charity shop for 50p, so doesn't count if you get it from a charity shop, right? This was one recommended by someone on Bookstat, and that is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've read quite a lot of Taylor Jenkins Reid and absolutely loved every book I've read of hers. I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones and the Six, Rengar's here, he told me I need to read this book as well. I have also read Carrie Soto's back and absolutely loved it. I've heard great things about this book, and the premise of it I found super interesting, so now that I own it, I will read it. I didn't own it before, so that could have been why I kind of neglected it, but now that I have it, I'm sure that I'll get around to reading it. I mean, I need to, as I said, but I'm sure that I will definitely get this read and the mood will strike and I'll be happy to read it. The next one is another book that I don't own, but I know the person personally, and it is The Blinding Absence of Light, so there's a good chance I might borrow that book from him instead of buying it, but again, I have an addiction, so we don't know that yet. He has offered to lend it to me though, so we'll see. I will be reading that one this year, and again, the mood hadn't struck last year and I didn't own it, so I just didn't really get around to reading it. The next one is another one that was recommended by someone I know. I don't know how so many people that I know ended up recommending books to me, but yeah, I think I read lots of books from 12 Challenge from people I didn't know, and I was like, it's fine if I don't read the ones that people I know recommended, because it's like less bad. It is Mary, and I'm pretty sure it's like a horror book. I'm hoping I pull this out at around October. Or what I might do is, if some of them do kind of suit a specific mood reading vibe, I might, if I pull them, put them back in if I think that they're more suited to another month, but I do feel like that's cheating, so we'll see. The next one is one I've been putting off for ages, even though I know I will adore this book, and that is A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon, and I'm sure you can see why I have been putting it off. It is thick. It is thick, thick, thick. It is a prequel to The Priory of the Orange Tree, and I kind of feel like I want to read Priory again if I'm reading this, because I read Priory a couple years ago, but both of them are thick books, and I feel like it's such like a commitment to read Priory again and read this, so I've just not got round to reading it, and I've been putting it off, even though I know it'll probably end up being one of my favourite books, which is one of the reasons, again, I'm trying not to focus on the number of books I read, because like, this is like 4 books worth of pages. Like, if I read, are you trying to tell me that if I read 2 300-page books, that it's worth more than this? Bizarre. Mind-boggling. Not the same thing. Not the same thing. And the last book that was in my 12 challenge that I didn't read is The House on the Cerulean Sea, which is a book I am so hyped to read, but again, don't own, so just ended up not reading it. I had tried to find it on Kindle, but it wasn't cheap, so I just kind of like put it off, and I'll probably need to buy this book, which is fine because I am very excited to read that book, and it's one that I would want to read regardless of having it recommended to me, so I'll probably buy that book, and that'll be, whenever I pull it out, I'll buy it, and that'll be one of the 2 books I can buy that month. So I had 11 of my 24 books predetermined essentially from my previous failures of my 23 and 2023 and the 12 challenge. So now let's go through the books that are from my shelves that I picked out personally to add to this list. And firstly, we've got a new book that I got at Christmas, and I'm so excited to read this book because I read The Martian and adored it. This is Project Hail Mary, and I've heard incredible things about this book. I've heard from someone I work with, I've heard from people on Booksa, I've heard from just reviews and stuff that this is an incredible book. And I love sci-fi, love The Martian, so I like Andy Weir's writing style. I'm sure I will adore this book. I cannot wait to read it. Can't wait, can't wait. I'm like hoping I pull it out in February so I can read it, because part of making that jar means that I read it when it comes out. Maybe I'll look for it and take it out so I can read it in February, we'll see. The next one is one I'm kind of ashamed that I still haven't read yet, because I feel like everyone's read it, and it is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I actually haven't read anything by V.E. Schwab. I don't think so, have I? No, I've not. That's crazy. That's crazy. I literally own like 4 or 5 of her books. Never read any of them. Not a single one. Don't know why. Buzzing to read it. Can't wait to read it. But I think I know why I've not read this one, and it's because the hype is insane around it. And there's been quite a lot of hyped books that they've fallen flat for me. Most of them kind of fall a bit flat. I think because they are so hyped, you expect a lot. So I'm trying to not be too excited about going into this book. But I don't know, I've just not read it. I've still not read it. I'm one of the only people that hasn't read it. It's like saying you've not read ACOTAR. How have I not read this book yet? But I will be reading it this year. The next one is another book I got for my Christmas, and the person that got me this was one of their favourite books of last year, so I'm super excited to read this. It's The Serpents and the Wings of the Night. I love fantasy books, I love fantasy series, so I am excited to start a new one. The only thing that worries me is getting super into this, loving it, and then wanting to read the series. I'm not actually sure how many of them are out at the moment, but then I'll end up just reading those and ignoring everything, or buying the series, we'll see. But I am excited to read this book. Love fantasy, love reading recommendations from people. If anyone has any recs for some of their favourite books ever, please do let me know, drop them in the comments. I promise to only buy them in sets of 2 every month. Yep. I love reading recommendations for people because, I don't know, it just feels like, not them sharing a part of it themselves with you, but it's like, I just care about reading books that other people have told me are great or have been some of their favourites. It's just, it feels really nice. I really enjoy it. Okay, wait, can that fit up there? No, too big, too big. The next one is one I got on a book haul a while ago, and that is The 7 Moons of Mali Almeida. Every time I mispronounce it. And it was the winner of the Booker Prize in 2022. I was about to say 2023, but that was the Prophet song, I lie. 2022. I cannot wait to read this book. I've never read a Booker Prize winning book, and I feel like it's just going to be incredible. Of course it is, it won the Booker Prize, but I don't know, I guess the mood hasn't struck. I've just been in the mood for more like light stuff, and this is not that. But how pretty is the cover? I am really hyped to read this book. A little bit scared to read it at the same time, but I'm sure I will absolutely love it. I've seen again lots of people saying that this is an incredible book, and it is obviously well reviewed by people who know a lot about books, considering it won the Booker Prize. The next book I am buzzing to read, and the only reason I've not read it is I'm thinking of rereading the first 2 books before reading this book, and it is The Temple of Fortuna. I loved The Wolf Den. It's one of my favourite books ever, and I also read The House with the Golden Door, which was really good. Not quite as good as Wolf Den, but still like really good. And then this is the 3rd one and the last one in the trilogy. So reading it, I'm like, I don't know if I want to read it and then later reread all 3, or if I want to start with The Wolf Den and reread the first 2 to read the 3rd one to get properly immersed into the world and the story, because I don't really remember the first 2 books. I'm sure I will once I start reading this, but I feel like it could be beneficial and also savouring this series by rereading the first 2 before reading this book. So I'm unsure at the moment what I'm going to do about it. I'll probably decide whenever I pull it out of the jar, but I absolutely adored the first 2 and I cannot wait to read this book. The next one is another one that is super hyped that I don't know how I've never read it, and I again got it for my Christmas. I actually got it in a really beautiful book bouquet that my sister made for me. I can't believe I've had one of those made for me. It was the cutest thing ever. It is The Secret History. Again, this is a super hyped book like The Invisible Life that I'm like slightly worried I won't like. But I love dark academia, so I'm sure I will enjoy it. Again, hyped books that have hit as well. I found some new favourite books because of books that have been hyped, and I'm just a bit worried about if I'll like it or not. I loved If We Were Villains, and I have heard that it's similar vibes. Not like the same story, but because they're both kind of dark academia, it's similar vibes. So I'm sure that I will like it. We'll see. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. It's a hyped book, so there's always that slight worry of if it will be enjoyable or not. The next one is the only non-fiction book that I put into my 24 and 2024. I put loads of non-fiction books into my 23 and 2023 and then felt slightly like I wasn't in the mood for non-fiction, but also felt bad about not reading any of them. So I was like, if I just put one in, I'll definitely read a non-fiction this year and then be happy with it. But if the mood strikes, I can read other non-fiction books, that's also fine. The one I've picked is What If, and that is because it has been on my shelves for years. I love physics, I love science. I've read so many physics books, but not this one. No. I bought this for myself years and years and years ago, like probably like 4 or 5 years ago, and I've just not picked it up. I don't know why. It's when I read the blurb, I was like, I need this book, like I need to have it. And then it's just been sitting collecting dust on my shelves for years. But this year, I'm gonna read this book. I'm gonna read it, and I am excited to read it. The next one was another Christmas gift. Can you believe it? You wouldn't think that anyone would have the idea to buy me books, would you? There's nothing to indicate that I would enjoy getting a book for Christmas. I also got a lot of Waterstones vouchers, which Yeah, this book is one that I've been meaning to read for the longest time, and it is one of my best friend's favourite books, and it is Pride and Prejudice. She even got me the really pretty cloth bound edition, so I'm so happy. I have heard so many great things about this. I've watched the film, albeit years ago, and the hand flicks. I can't wait to read that. I'm sure this book is going to hold up so well. It's going to be another classic that I absolutely love and another pretty one to add to my shelf, so I'm so excited. I don't know why I've still never read it. I've never read Jane Austen actually, and I wasn't really sure where to start because she has so many books. But I was thinking Pride and Prejudice, and my friend agreed Pride and Prejudice is where to start. So thank you so much for getting me this book, and I'm so excited to read it. The next book is a very pretty one. Look at it, that I am really excited to read. It is one that was released somewhat recently in the last few months, and I got it signed actually, which is really nice. It's dedicated to me as well. I was unwell at the time and my sister went to get it signed. Thanks for that. Yeah, this book, there's not much to say about it for me at the moment. I'm going in without much expectations for the book because I've heard very mixed reviews. I am excited to read it though, and when I read the blurb I was super intrigued by it. So I am looking forward to reading this one this year. It's not been on my shelves for a long time or anything like that, and it wasn't a gift, so it's unique in this list. The next book that I've got, I realised how many books, 24 books, hello, from Chloe from the future, after she realised that she apparently cannot count to 24. I accidentally left out 2 books when I first recorded this. Put on the same jumper for some sense of continuity, you know. Look, it's fine, I'm an engineer, I didn't claim that I knew how to do maths. The 2 books that I forgot to mention were Clara and the Sun and Godkiller. So I got Clara and the Sun actually in the Waterstones half price sale at Christmas, and look, I managed to get one that had these gorgeous edges, and I'm so excited. I've never read any Ishiguro. I'm really bad at pronouncing authors' names, I really should look it up. But yeah, I've not read any of his books yet, and I've been meaning to for the longest time, and I've actually had my eye on Clara and the Sun in the library. But when I was in Waterstones and saw this, I was like, it's not a want, it's a need. As you can see, I don't have the pile of books anymore, so these will just be getting piled as 2 because, as I said, I can't count. The other one is Godkiller, and actually I heard about this book from going to a signing for Samantha Shannon, and it was actually Hannah who was interviewing her, and she just seemed so cool, and her book came recommended by Samantha Shannon, so I was like, I feel like I need to get it. And Sunbringer is actually coming out this year as well, and I've pre-ordered that, so fingers crossed I like this book. I feel like I should like it, and plus look how gorgeous it is. So yeah, I'm super excited to read this book too, and that actually makes 24 now, so back to you, past Chloe. But we've only got 2 more, so it's fine, we're getting there, we're almost there. The next one is, I think, the prettiest book I own, and that's saying something. Look at it. It is a fairy lit edition of Swordcatcher. I have never read Cassandra Clare, ever, and I really want to read her Clockwork series, and she's got other ones as well, but I really want to read all those, but it's such a huge dedication. There's like loads, and they're all huge, but this is the start of a new series. So it's only 1 book right now. I'm not dedicating myself to like a huge like multiverse of books. It's not like Sarah J Maas, like they're not connected. So this is a standalone book at the moment. It's going to be a series, I'm pretty sure. But we're on book 1. So I have the chance to read this without the overwhelming aspect of having so many books to read. And I can discover if I like Cassandra Clare. I'm sure I will. But I'm so excited to read this book, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. So I'm also slightly worried to read it because I'm like, what if I like crinkle a page or something? It's so pretty. Now we're on to the final book, and it is one of the most anticipated reads of my entire life. And I'm trying not to channel that energy too much for when I read it. I'm reading it in January. I've actually started it, and I'm trying to not be too hyped about it because I don't think it's going to live up to the first book that I read of his, and it is The Year of the Locust. This is by the same author of I Am Pilgrim, and I Am Pilgrim is one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. I've actually not read that for like 5 years, so I do need to reread it, but I've been anticipating this book for ages. It was meant to be released like 5 years ago, and then it kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, and it was finally released at the end of last year. I'm so excited to read this book. At first I thought it was a sequel to I Am Pilgrim, but apparently it's not, so it is a different storyline. Slightly upset about that, but it's fine, it's fine. I am trying, as I said, to lower my expectations, because if I go in expecting Pilgrim and it's not, but it's still good, I'll be so disappointed. Or even if I go in expecting Pilgrim and it is, then it'll just be meeting my expectations. So I'm trying to like calm down. But I've been looking forward to reading this book for literal years. Literally. So I am really excited to have it on my shelves. I'm so grateful to be able to be reading it this month. So here we go. These are all the physical ones that I've got. The rest I'll just need to buy. Oh no. Or borrow. Thank you so much for tuning into my video where I covered my goals for 2024 and my 24 and 2024 reading list. I hope everyone has a fantastic year of reading. Thank you. Bye.